Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Lucy van der Tas and I'm the Head of Talent Acquisition at ESA. This week is the first ESA Careers Week, and in each of our live sessions, we share insights into the different aspects of working at ESA. Today is the fourth session, and we're going to talk about the ESA entry-level programs. Joining me today are Katie Hussein, Matthew Vaughan, Morgan Royer, and Malte Bergholz. And just before I ask them to introduce themselves, I'd like to say a few words to our audience today about the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, you have the possibility to put some questions. My colleagues Miriam, Nuria, and Lorraine are in the background collecting your questions, and they'll put them forward to us to answer live. If you have a very in-depth technical question, obviously today we're focusing on what it's like to work at ESA, so the in-depth technical questions will be answered offline. So thank you. So perhaps you'd like to say a few words, starting with you, Katie, to introduce yourself.
Sure, thanks. So I'm Katie Hussein. I'm the head of the Science Division in the Science Directorate. And so in my division, we host all the project scientists. We have some communication and education activities, as well as research activities. And as part of that, that means that my division hosts the research fellows that come and work on space science.
That's very interesting. We'll go into more detail about the research fellows in a bit. Morgan, perhaps you'd like to say a few words about yourself.
Yes, thank you very much. So my name is Morgan. I'm a young graduate trainee in procurement in the satellite and telecommunication division. So I work with the technical officers and we evaluate the proposal we receive from company, and I'm involved until from evaluation through negotiation until contract award.
Thank you. Malte.
Yeah, hi, I'm Malte Bergholz. I'm also a young graduate at ESA in the onboard computers and data handling section though, and I come from a computer science background, studied my master's in Hanover. In the onboard computer section, we work with, like the name suggests, the onboard computers and how data is collected and transferred in the spacecraft mostly.
Thank you. And last but not least, Matthew.
Sure. Hi, my name is Matthew Vaughan and I'm British. I currently work as a thermal engineer in the mechanical department here at ESTEC, but I used to be a YGT back in 2014. So during my YGT, I spent 1 year here at ESTEC. And then I was lucky enough to do a second year in industry in Toulouse in France. And now I've been working for about 8 years in this role, and I'm starting to tutor the next generation of YGTs and interns here.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to start our presentation. We have some slides and some background information to share with you, and we will highlight various aspects as part of the discussion as we move forward. So this first slide shows it's an overview of the various entry-level programs. So you've heard us referring to the Research Fellowship Program with Katie and her team, and Malte and Matthew and Morgan have referred to the Ungraduate Trainee Program. So we'll go into each of them in a little bit more depth. Starting with the student internships. So the ESA internship program, it intends to provide an experience or first experience to students from all ESA member states and of course from our associated and cooperating states. We offer 3 to 6 months for the internships, and the program helps, particularly with a lot of students, to comply with the requirements of the educational institutions. Quite often our students and our interns use the internship to complete their master's thesis. And this is a very helpful aspect of the program. But it also aims at helping students to discover what it's like to work in the space sector and what a multicultural environment is. So it has the possibility to open the first doors to a work experience in the space sector, and hopefully will encourage the motivation to those students who have an interest in space technology, even if you don't have a direct space background. So each intern has a tutor, someone who is an experienced professional working at ESA who guides and supervises the intern as they go through their internship. We publish some 100 internship opportunities every year, usually in the autumn, and they're open for a month. So if you're interested in an internship, please read them carefully, as each one can cover one or several topics. So you should choose the one that is closest to your interest and motivation. Do not forget to share in your application and motivation letter the reason for this choice and where your interests lie. We know that at this stage you will not have professional experience per se, so you should share your motivation, passion, or interests in general to trigger our curiosity and so that we will offer you this placement. So the next program is the Ungraduate Trainee program. And this is a program where we offer recent graduates, master's graduates, a one-year internship or traineeship opportunity at ESA. If you've just completed a master's degree in a technical or scientific discipline or are about to complete your degree, the Ungraduate Traineeship is for you. So a lot of people will apply while they're still actually completing their master. And the idea is to help you to embark on a career in research or the space industry inside or outside ESA. So in principle, a young graduate traineeship lasts for 1 year. Sometimes it can go on for a second year, depending on the status of the project, the budget, and of course, the performance, motivation, and interest of the young graduate concerned. During your young graduate traineeship, you'll be assigned a tutor who is also a professional expert and who will guide you and accompany you. And you will be part of a big community of young professionals, which we will also go into a little bit later on in this session. It's a very dynamic community, very eager to share knowledge, work hard, but also to have fun. The young graduate trainee opportunities open in February for 1 month, and you are, again, advised to read them carefully to choose the best 1 or 2 that match with your profiles and interests. And now I would like to ask some questions to Matthew and Malt about the Young Graduate Traineeship Programme. Great. Matthew,
Sure.
As you said in your introduction, you've been a young graduate yourself, and you also now tutor young graduates. So when you select a young graduate for your team, what kind of profiles grab your attention when you're reading the CV and motivation letter?
Sure, that's a very interesting question. So some advice I would maybe give would be to try to focus on a technical story and show this in your CV and cover letter and try to expand on this story. It doesn't matter, it doesn't need to be in the space domain, but it could be something you've done at university or in your own time. And then with this technical story, try to link it to some of the aspects in the role you're applying for. And I think for us to read, that's very interesting. And then we can see, okay, how you'll fit in our team. Okay, maybe they'll be good at software or modeling or something like this. And we can see those skills, and then we can make the choice based on that.
That's great, thank you. But what do you expect from a young graduate in the daily work?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I think the young graduate trainee position is a learning experience. So it's kind of a transition between university and the working world. And therefore, we would expect it to be given a number of tasks. So I would set my young graduates and interns a number of long and short-term tasks, depending on how long they're here for. And those, for example, may include, for example, my current trainees are doing lunar and Mars modeling. They're also doing aerobraking around Venus. Some are working in the laboratory. And we even have some people working in the concurrent design facility on new ESA missions. So there's really a broad range of topics you can work on here.
Indeed. Based in engineering primarily, because that's
Indeed,
the focus
yeah.
of your activities, indeed. So Malta, what do you think made the difference between you and another candidate when you applied?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, actually. I think because my situation is kind of unique in the sense that I don't have any space background at all. But what I do have instead is that I studied both electrical engineering and computer science. And that gives me very broad backgrounds on embedded systems in general, which form the basis for our current onboard computers. And I think that really helped. Like you already said, the technical knowledge is really important, and to weave that into a story in your application. And then also I worked quite a bit as a research assistant in university, and I think the specific project knowledge I gained there translated very luckily very well to my current position, and that helped me, I think, as well.
A candidate's profile rarely matches the job description to 100%. So do you want to say a little bit more about your match with this position based on your own experiences?
Yeah, I mean, indeed. When I looked at the position first, I saw a few points that matched, but certainly not all of them. But I think it is very very important still to apply, because in the end, what the job description is merely, or often, I think, a few things you could do, and then if you match some of the points, often that's enough, because anyways you can't do all of them in 1 year. So you anyways select with your supervisor based on your prior knowledge what you want to do.
Thank you, and I think that's a very important point. A lot of people set the bar too high for themselves when applying, and they look at the job and think, oh, I'm not sure I can do that. But you would say...
Still apply, absolutely.
Yeah. Make sure there is a match to some of the aspects,
exactly,
and then go
yeah.
for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Well, thank you very much. So we'll go back to the presentation now. And we'll talk about the National Trainee Program. So I'll just move the slides on. So here, the National Trainee Program. So it's a program where the people who come to ESA as national trainees have similar profiles to young graduates. The big difference, however, is whereas a young graduate is directly employed by ESA, national trainees are set up through bilateral agreements between ESA and the national space agencies. So the national trainee selection is made by the national agency with the support of ESA HR. Once they come to ESA, however, they belong to the same young professional group and they follow the same work and practices. So, to recap, the National Trainee Program offers recent university graduates the opportunity to gain practical hands-on experience at ESA in a wide variety of space disciplines. In the same way as for young graduates, traineeships are offered in fields as space science, Earth observation, telecommunications, navigation, mission control, and human spaceflight. So the focus here is on the engineering and scientific disciplines. Selected candidates receive an on-the-job training under the supervision and guidance of a dedicated tutor at one of the ESA's establishments. So the traineeships last for 12 months and can be extended for up to 12 more. So a few words about the ESA Research Fellowship Program. So this is a postdoctoral research fellowship program offering scientists and engineers the opportunity to carry out advanced research in a variety of disciplines related to space science, space applications, and space technology. So ESA hosts approximately 50 internal research fellows each year, and each one is on a 2-year contract. In some cases, it's quite exceptional, but it does happen, a 3rd-year extension can be granted. Candidates must have recently completed or be close to completing a PhD in a relevant technical or scientific discipline. Preference will be given to applications submitted by candidates within 5 years of receiving their PhD. And you should be a citizen of one of ESA's member states, associated members, or cooperating states. The other programs have a specific schedule, and I did not mention that for the Young Graduate Trainee Program. The applications for the Young Graduate Trainee Program are in February, and the internships in the autumn. But for the Research Fellows, this is different. The Space Science Research Fellowship Program, and we'll talk to Gaty about that in a moment, that starts in the autumn, and usually there are around 12 positions opened each year. Other areas at ESA, such as Earth observation, human spaceflight, the Advanced Concepts team, or our Directorate of Technology, Engineering and Quality, open positions throughout the year. So it's a good idea to keep an eye on our website. I definitely recommend you go on there, you sign up for an alert, because then the system will notify you every time a vacancy is open, and you don't need to keep on looking at the website yourself. And another area is the Phi Lab in Esrin. They also have opportunities opened all year long. And here, it's quite specific. The Phi Lab is looking for people who combine technical knowledge in data science, so artificial intelligence and machine learning, with expertise in Earth observation. And now we will continue the discussion with Gaty. So, Gaty, what kind of profiles are you looking for when you recruit research fellows, particularly in your area?
So that's a really good question. And the answer is, actually, we have no real specific profile that we look for. As you pointed out, we can hire up to 12 research fellows every year in the space science area. And so what we look for is a balance overall in the skills that they have and how they complement each other. What I would say is what we look for in each of them, there's one core range of skills that we look for in each of them, which is really we look for independence, and we look for the ability to reach out and find collaborations and connections with other people and other disciplines. And the reason for that is that ESA is a very particular environment. It's very different from university. It's very different from other research groups that they might have been used to during their PhDs or after. And so we look for people who can sort of build connections, really make the most of their time while they're here, essentially. So I would say that's broadly what we look for.
Thank you. And how would you describe the interactions with the scientific community if you're a research fellow at ESA?
So I think it's a very important part of it, and we look for research fellows that have good connections with the scientific community when they come, and the idea is to build more connections, because the idea is that they get the experience of working at the European Space Agency and then take what they've learned here and use that to enhance their careers further out in member states and beyond in their careers. And so they come with connections, and we encourage them to build more connections and help them build more connections with the project scientists who work in my division and other scientists in the science directorate. The other thing that we encourage them to do is find more links internally. And one of the most exciting things about in the science directorate and also beyond is that our missions actually encompass such a wide range of scientific areas. And so there's a real chance to make connections between missions that you think aren't obvious. And you can make advances in interdisciplinary areas that otherwise you wouldn't have found those connections if you didn't come here. So that's one area that we really encourage people to have conversations outside of their own, sometimes narrow scientific disciplines.
Thank you. So typically, a research fellow in the Space Science Directorate comes to ESA for their research fellowship, and then they go back to continue their scientific career. Would you like to say a few words about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I'm an example of that. So I was a research fellow in the early 2000s, so quite a while ago. And with the connections that I made here, with the skills that I learned working in this extremely multicultural environment, international environment, I actually got a really great job working in Germany in an international astronomical organization. And I worked there for many years as a staff member before I was recruited back here to be head of the science division. So I think you gain a lot of extra skills working at the European Space Agency that you just wouldn't elsewhere.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you very much. So we'll go back to the presentation for a few more slides. So I'd like to say a few words here about ESA Cofunded Research. So this is very different from our other programs insofar as it is not managed by HR, and we don't recruit through the same mechanism, i.e. there's not a selection process through the recruiting website or interviews. You need to submit a proposal through ESA's Open Space Innovation Platform, and through this you can get the opportunity to be co-funded. And we're looking for novel and space-related PhD and postdoctoral research activities. So in a nutshell, we're looking for novel ideas, and novelty is the differentiator. So the ideas are evaluated, and the most novel and promising are selected for funding via an ESA implementation scheme. And these co-funded research activities increase interaction between ESA, European universities, research, and industry. And from a very practical perspective, the researcher, whether they are a PhD or a postdoc, are linked to a specific university, and ESA places a contract with that university in order to carry out the activities. So what does ESA sponsorship look like? So we can co-fund up to 50% and up to 90,000 euros for research for the doctoral degree. This usually lasts 3 years. or for postdoctoral investigation, which is typically 2 years. We also grant access to the ESTEC laboratories here in the Netherlands. We have some cutting-edge laboratories at ESTEC, and the researchers are able to come on site and use our facilities. Participants to this scheme also get technical support from the ESA experts. They can discuss concepts, assess the potential for space applications, and it's a great way to start building up professional networks, which you can use later on in your career. So, for more information, go to the site ideas.esa.int. I'll come back to the other websites for the other programs in a moment, because there is one place where we keep everything. The next program is the Junior Professional Program. So this is a brand new program. We launched it in November 2021, and it's an entry-level program for graduates with 2 to 3 years of professional experience after their master. So what differentiates the Junior Professional Program from the other programs is that we have a very tailored and dedicated development program which is customized to the background of each individual junior professional. So the idea is for the junior professionals to join ESA for 3 years, and through their development program, they are prepared for a permanent position with ESA at the end of the 3 years. So the idea is that what is a short-term contract is then converted into a permanent position with ESA. So the core purpose of this program is to prepare the junior professionals for a long-term role in the agency. When we launched it in November, we opened 30 positions, and these were dedicated to areas that are essential in the coming years, more specifically linked to the transformation of the agency with critical new technologies or payload technologies. And through the program, we aim to foster knowledge sharing and cooperation across these areas, but also to boost the junior professionals' learning curve. The next selection round is currently foreseen for November 2024 for a start in 2025. So get ready. The next round of junior professional vacancies could be a unique opportunity to launch your career in ESA. So, the next slide, which I need to press on, sorry about that. If we could go back to the slides, thank you. So, we're now looking at the competencies in terms of the engineering disciplines, and we'll go through the various types of competencies required at ESA for these positions. So we're often asked by students what kind of disciplines they should study to prepare for working one day at ESA, and which disciplines we value the most. So, if we will continue the discussion, thank you very much. So Matthew, perhaps you'd like to share with the audience what main technical disciplines we can find in a team of experts working on space projects.
Sure. Actually, the disciplines that you've just shown here are interesting because I'm working in the mechanical department, so I'm a thermal engineer. But actually, I have interactions with most people that you've shown on the slide. So I think the important thing to know is that, okay, you specialize in something, but you work as part of a much larger team with lots of other disciplines. So it's never that you're solving the problem alone. It's always a compromise between your subsystem and someone else's. For example, for the thermal engineering, we might work with structural engineering for thermoelastic problems, or we might work with materials to see how they behave at different temperature ranges. So I think the takeaway is really, it doesn't matter what your background is, really. There's something that will be able to fit your skills into some of these disciplines.
And let's take a quick look again at those disciplines, and we can see where they fit in to the various ones. So the one you were referring to was the mechanical engineering, and we can see that thermal engineering is there. So we have the electrical engineering as well, RF systems, power and data systems, antennas, microelectronics, EMC and components, and so on and so forth. And systems engineering, telecommunications, software engineering, IT, of course, which is a very important discipline. It underpins everything that we do at ESA in our daily work, ground segment, and product and quality assurance and safety. So, coming back to you again,
Sure.
Matthew, how does the technical knowledge acquired at university help somebody evolve towards developing this type of technical expertise?
Yeah. So I think when you come here, you obviously come with a very academic background if you've come from university. And the next step is to kind of translate this into more results-orientated kind of work. So you'll be more hands-on, you'll be working on actual space missions and real projects. You'll also be amongst the team of experts, so we have an open door policy normally, and we can ask anyone any question at any time. So this will help you develop as well. And yeah.
Great. So what would you say are the main challenges of working in a project?
I think my main challenge personally is probably communication. So I think communication is very important. If I just take an example, if you're trying to explain a technical topic and you're in a meeting, it's very likely that not everyone in that meeting will have the same level of expertise as you. So it's very important to try to get your point over clearly and to make sure everything's understood. And as you all probably know, this is very difficult in an international environment as well, because people are not always speaking in their native language. So you have to be very careful to listen to everyone and make sure that everyone's point is understood. So, yeah.
Great, thank you very much. So Malte, coming to you, working in the onboard data systems division, which in that slide falls under the electrical engineering area. So what do you enjoy most in your young graduate traineeship, and how have you seen that evolve over your time here?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, actually. Matthew mentioned it briefly. When you come from university, and especially me as a research assistant, you're very focused on lab work. And so at the beginning, I was in the lab. I was working mostly in the lab and working on a CubeSat, FlatSat, for example, we have in our lab. But as I got to get more into this like project work and working with actual space systems, so it grew my knowledge, and so I was interested in different things. And I think the good thing about the YGT is that when you're curious enough, you often get offered chances to different things. So I could, for example, work in the design studies of the concurrent design facility, or now even help with the procurement processes and review documents regarding to new spacecraft designs. And I think, so basically my focus has shifted from the purely research academic, what I came from, towards more of what is daily work of a ESA staff member.
And you said you've worked in the concurrent design facility, which is a very specific facility with a very specific modus operandum, where all the experts sit together in the same room and contribute. So how did you find that experience?
It was very interesting because I know a lot of the YGTs have been at ESA Academy, for example, and have seen the CDF before. For me, it was a completely new experience, but it's very nice because if you work as a research assistant, you obviously you're building expertise still, so you're not as confident. And then when you're in the CDF, you're put on the spot, kind of. You're asked for your expertise, and then you realize, actually, I know quite a bit, so I can contribute here. And I think that's a very nice feeling to have, to be able to contribute to something that might at some point actually fly.
And you must find it very interesting too, seeing the interactions among all the disciplines.
Yes,
and the
absolutely,
contributions.
absolutely, yeah. Because it's really you can see how one decision in a design process affects all these disciplines, and then everyone has to chime in and give their opinions so they can make something that works in the end.
Thank you very much. So we'll come back now to the scientific disciplines in the presentation. So the scientific disciplines. So we cover a wide range here. Applied mathematics, that's quite often with orbital dynamics. Earth observation and environmental science. This is also very important in the climatology and meteorology. Planetary and space science, and I'll come back to Gati in a moment to speak about that, astronomy, astrophysics, and solar physics. And life and material sciences. So life sciences are very important for the International Space Station, for instance. So, Gati, you've already given us some really interesting information about a research fellow profile. So let's focus on the main scientific disciplines that we have at ESA. So is there anything you'd like to highlight from that perspective, taking it further about the domains in your field of expertise?
Absolutely. So I wanted to sort of return to the point that Matthew raised about having an open door policy. So one of the really great things about the range of science in the area that I work in is that research fellows can often find connections between planetary science and astronomy and solar physics. And so one recent example was a research fellow who took Hubble images that were taken for astronomical purposes and set up a citizen science project, talking to our data science experts, talking to people who are experts in planetary science, and now people around the world are using our Hubble images to find asteroids in Hubble data. And so it's a real example of finding how you can get the most out of data that already exists that was taken for completely different purposes. And it's just from research fellows being able to find connections between the different areas that we serve with our missions.
That's very interesting. So what can you tell us about being an ESA Research Fellow? You said you were one once some years ago.
Absolutely. So I think there's so many different opportunities that research fellows get. And certainly I can speak with knowledge about my area and from my own experience. So we have research fellows, as I mentioned before, with a range of different profiles. Some are straight out of their PhDs, some are coming on their second postdoc even, so within about 5 years of their PhD, maybe 6 in some cases. And so we have a real range of experience. And we offer them opportunities to work on missions or communication activities or education activities. And so usually research fellows take on one of those sort of what we call functional duties, but it's really a chance for them to talk to engineers or talk to our communication experts and gain extra skills, basically, working here. And certainly I took advantage of that when I was a research fellow myself, and I see the research fellows just taking advantage of lots of different opportunities. And again, going back to the open door policy, the fact that everyone at ESA generally, not just in the science directorate, but often we're working across directorates as well. So we're working with colleagues in the Human and Robotic Exploration Directorate, for instance. We find many more things to do than the research fellows originally proposed to do in their research plans. So it's always exciting to see where they take their initial ideas, because usually where they end up is very different from where they started. And it's really fascinating to see.
And exciting, I would say.
Absolutely. Very rewarding, actually, to just see everyone doing brilliant things.
That's amazing. So the research fellows in science are located both here at ESTEC in the Netherlands and also in Madrid at ESAC.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about the cooperation between the two, how that works?
Absolutely. So one of the few silver linings that have come out of this COVID environment that we're just now emerging from, hopefully, is that we've managed to use these online tools a lot more effectively in the last couple of years. And so a lot of the research fellows are now building links between the research that they've been doing at ESTEC and the research that other research fellows are doing in Spain. And so we're setting up sort of working groups in particular scientific areas across the different sites. And in fact, we have one research fellow also at Space Telescope Science Institute as well in Baltimore. And so they actually have built this online. They've built a very comprehensive sort of support group, but also scientific groups within that they use to sort of bounce ideas off each other. And so there's a lot of connections being built that the scientists that are longer-term staff members are also benefiting from their efforts. So there's a lot of knock-on effects that are extremely positive.
So everybody's benefiting all round from this sharing.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's really great. Thank you. We'll go back to the presentation now for another slide. And here we'll be talking about the non-technical competencies at ESA. So we've spent quite a bit of time on engineering and science, and now we can look at the other areas, because ESA, as in any organization, also needs people with these backgrounds. We need people with backgrounds in law, finance, communications and public relations, human resources, and facility management. So a question for Morgane. Morgane, you have a background in law, and you work in procurement. So how do you apply the skills and expertise that you gained at university?
That's a very good question, thanks. So indeed, I have a background in law. I specialized in space law. And but also because I have this double degree in translation, I have learned during my studies to interact in very international environment. and also to interact with people with different backgrounds. And I will join what Matthew said about communication, because indeed it can be difficult sometimes, because I'm working with the technical officers and the project controllers, and we speak the same language, English, but sometimes we do not speak the same language. And so it's an effort on both sides to make sure that we understand each other. And also, I think one of the skills I'm using mostly is the pedagogy, so the ability to explain legal concepts to people who are not used to manipulate those concepts, especially with the company who can sometimes be a bit concerned about some aspect of the contract. And so this whole set of soft skills of explanation and making myself clear, I think this is the thing I'm using most, that I learned during my studies.
Thank you. So you're saying that the soft skills, I mean, I've been hearing this, the communication, the open door, and in your case, the ability to really communicate, even if we're all speaking the same language on the surface, but to go deeper and make sure that everybody understands is really critical.
Yeah, I would say this is the main element. And of course, having the background in law makes me able to understand more quickly and have all the concepts in mind already.
Great, thank you. So what is a day like for a young graduate trainee in procurement? Do you have regular interactions with colleagues from projects? You talked about project controllers and technical officers, the people who are running the activities. Perhaps you could describe that for us.
Yes, so I would say my interactions are actually really split almost half and half with my team and half with colleagues from other directorates. In my case, principally, mainly the colleagues from telecom. Because on all, I'm dealing with all the contracts mostly independently. So on those tasks, I'm interacting with project controllers and technical officers. But of course, I often need guidance or exchange opinions, or I have questions, and this is when I interact with my team. And we have those section meetings twice a month to exchange and clarify, and because we often are encountering the same kind of problems.
Great, thank you very much. So we'll go back to the next slide of the presentation, and this is where we will be talking about what we are looking for. So you've been hearing a lot about the educational requirements for the entry-level programs. They do indeed start at master's level. If you're studying for a master, or if you are recently graduated, or a PhD level. We're looking for people with a passion for space. If you're thinking about space and you don't feel that you're necessarily passionate about it, you will probably become quite passionate about it when you join us. Relevant experience, this depends very much on the individual jobs, because obviously if you're coming to ESA in an entry-level position, we're here to help you build that experience. So the relevant experience is something that people build for, and also becomes more important the further you go in your career. Team spirit, I think it's very important. We've heard about communication here, but the team spirit, and there's a very strong team spirit in many areas working at ESA, and if you come to join us, you will share that and you will experience that. The professional curiosity and expertise. The professional curiosity, I think, is one of the driving factors. If you have that professional curiosity, you will make the most of your time at ESA. You will look for the opportunities to learn. You will look for the opportunities to meet people, build networks, and that will stand you in good stead throughout your career. The language skills, we've talked about that. English is the language that we use at ESA professionally, but it's spoken in very different ways by very different cultures. And the multicultural attitude, the openness to different cultures. And in a nutshell, I think we can say that we are a very diverse pool of people working for ESA. So we'll just say a few words here about diversity and inclusiveness. So if we could go back to the presentation. So diversity here. We say that diversity is in the DNA of ESA, with our 22 member states and our associate members and the cooperating states. We also work with nations beyond that, but we also have diverse educational backgrounds. We come from different places, we have different cultures, different generations, different personalities, different genders, STEM, non-STEM. So diversity as a whole, we feel, makes our teams richer, our approaches more innovative, and our solutions smarter. And in the slide, you can see a number of aspects of that diversity at ESA that I've touched in here. We have flexible working practices, the last bullet down there, family-friendly environment. Again, COVID has brought a lot of things with it, but one of the spin-offs has been the ability now to really move into a truly hybrid working environment and the flexibility to be able to work from home when needed. And there are many aspects here on this slide. So I'd just like to ask Matthew and Gaty, perhaps Gaty, you first. As a tutor and a manager, what would you like to say about diversity in a team?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's, of course, as you've mentioned already, it's extremely critical, and we want as many ideas on the table when we're trying to address problems, and it's important then to have everyone feel A, safe to speak up, and B, to have as many different ideas. And as you said, people coming from different backgrounds, different disciplines, different countries, ensures that we always have different perspectives that are in the mix, and then we can discuss how to reconcile those and how to find a way forward. But it makes for an extremely dynamic and exciting environment. And if I might say, so certainly with our early career scientists, so with the research fellows, with the YGTs and with the interns, they bring so many great ideas as well. And they come very fresh from a vast number of different institutes and universities and backgrounds as well. And so they can also tell us, where we can be doing better, where we can be more inclusive. And I really encourage that kind of conversation in my everyday life to find out how can we do better, who's doing better than us, so we can take the best ideas from out there in the world and implement them just locally in our everyday working lives. And I find the research fellows absolutely tell us where we can be doing better, and I really value that input.
Thank you.
Yeah, I actually agree with what you've just said. In fact, I can probably give a practical example from my perspective, at least. So this morning I came into work and I just did a quick head count, and I saw that we, in my small team, we were already 10 nationalities. And actually this spans probably 3 generations as well. We have people from 20 to 63, right, in our group. And we have regular brainstorming sessions. We also have Friday morning meetings every week, of which YGTs and interns have to present during these meetings as well and share their ideas. And the result of all these meetings actually becomes R&D activities, and we place these R&D activities with industry. So in fact, what you can say is diversity is directly fueling the creativity in our team. So I think this is a practical example, yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. And Gaty, I don't know if you'd like to say a word about women in STEM disciplines. Perhaps we could just touch on that for a moment.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is an area in which there's always room for improvement. I think what's really important to emphasize is that there is a place here for people of all genders, of women, and we need to understand how better we can accommodate people with different needs, I think. And so one of the things that you alluded to, which I think is really great, is ESA's response to COVID has really opened up the way that people can work. And I think that absolutely means that people with different care needs, different family needs, really can be accommodated in a way that I'm not seeing in a lot of other places in our member states and beyond. So I think we're really at a really cutting edge of many of those practices, which I think is really great to see and really encouraging to people who have questions about these things, or that might be making them think twice about whether this might be the place for them. Our most diverse areas are amongst the early career scientists, and one of my goals is to make sure that we can propagate that upwards, essentially, that they want to come and work with us and stay as staff members. And I think that's something that we're actively working towards. It is a work in progress, partly because the pipeline is what it is. I mean, certainly when I was a student, there were much fewer women in my area than there are now, and we just have to make sure that the trajectory is in the right way, and ideally work to sort of increase the slope so that we can accelerate that improvement that I've seen in the last 20 years working in this area.
Thank you very much, and I think I can second that from my experiences. We've come a very long way. We've still got a long way to go. It's work in progress, but I feel we're on the right track there. Thank you. So we'll go back to the presentation. So what do we offer? So we offer inspiring projects and activities and lots of learning and development. And what do we expect from you? Please bring your inspiration, your ideas, the fresh ideas. We can only benefit from this. We can only learn from it. I think that the interactions and the sharing is really important. There's great technical experiences at ESA which we can share, and we can give you the opportunity to tap into those through the projects and the activities. Now, there's also some very thriving and active communities of young professionals. So, Morgan, come to you. You are the lead coordinator of the Young Professional Advisory Group, the YPAG. So can you tell us more about the young professional community and their initiatives, events, information sessions?
Yes, absolutely. So the YPAG was created a few years ago with an initial goal to give a voice to young professionals among ESA staff and management. And little by little, this has opened, and now we're almost 30 young professionals active in this group, with 9 working groups, going from organizing what we call Fascinating Friday. So we invite a member of an ESA staff who has an inspiring career and story to tell, to the group's so-called social event that organized a camping trip last year for all the young professionals. So we have this very diverse pool of activities, and the main highlight, I think, is where the young professional event that will take place at the end of this month, where we have a 2-day event of conference and career panels. And the highlight of this event is the Digi session. So for 2 hours, we have an exchange with the Director General of ESA, where the young professional can present their ideas and ask questions to the director. And last year's event led to actually a proper task group created within ESA. So I think those are the main activities of the YPAG. But we're also a relay for other activities. And for instance, this year we have shared this project of the YPSAT, and now many young professionals are working on the project to send a satellite on Ariane 6 maiden flight.
Thank you very much. So, YPSAT, I believe, Malta, you're involved with that.
Yeah,
Can you
exactly.
tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. I'm involved in the computing system for that YPSAT, and as Vaughan already said, it's supposed to fly on the Ariane 6 maiden flight. It's a small CubeSat that's basically bolted onto the last stage. And it's a very cool project because it's basically, it was kicked off last October, and it's just a team of young professionals managing every aspect of the development. So from the actual procurement to the finance to management and also to the actual implementation. So we will actually be implementing the software for it later this year, and hopefully we'll launch in December, I think is the current estimate. But basically what this shows is that if you want, as a YGT, these opportunities are there, and while this one might not be there next year, I'm sure others will. And I think it's a great opportunity for someone as a YGT.
Great, thank you very much. So we'll go back to the slides. And we have here a collection of words. And there's many words there. We asked people to tell us what they felt about ESA, working at ESA. And there are a lot of words there, and each one of us can pick out 1 or 2 that relate to ESA for us. We've talked about communication. So we have fun in there as well, and sharing, hard work, respect, values. But I mean, to quote a colleague of mine, pleasure at work is essential. You do better what you do if you do it with pleasure. So I don't know if the 4 of you would like to pick up 1 or 2 words and share with us. Morgan, would you like to start?
Yes, sure. I was thinking of adding discovery to this list because I think one of the highlights of my experience at ESA is having completely broadened perspective and discovered a lot. I mean, I had heard a lot about ESA before, having graduated in a space-related major, but still, it was very, I don't know, mind-changing to join ESA.
Thank you. Katie?
So I think definitely curiosity, I think, is the word that stands out to me, and then the one that I think is something that I see every day amongst everyone that I work with, and it's really transformational. And I really, I think many people just absolutely embody curiosity here, and I love that. It makes working here really interesting.
Thank you. Malta?
I think you just took my word because I was at curiosity too, because I think, and also maybe proactive, because I think what makes the YGT experience for me is that you're proactive about learning things, and through that proactiveness, you get a lot of opportunities you can take, and for me, that has made me learn so much, and I don't think I wouldn't have that if not for the proactiveness of asking for it.
Thank you.
I think for me, personally, would be creativity. So often you think of space as the final frontier, but actually what you're working on is very novel, and it's not always that you can read it in a book or something. You often be working on a project for the first time, or trying to do something or develop something in an R&D contract. So I think creativity is really essential for that.
Great, fantastic. Miriam, we may have time for a couple of questions here. So any questions coming in on the YouTube Q&A?
Oh yeah, there was tons of questions coming in. We were able to answer quite a few via the chat, but I do have a couple with me to ask here with the panel. The first one was, I wasn't accepted as a YGT. Does this hinder my chances if I were to apply again?
I think I can probably take that one. The answer is no. It does not hinder your chances to apply again. What you need to look at is the selection criteria, the eligibility criteria, because that is what defines it. 1 year you may apply, you may be unlucky, you should definitely try again the following year. And I see Matthew.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say myself, I applied 3 times to be an intern, and unfortunately I was not successful. And then on the 3rd time when I applied to be a YGT, luckily I managed to get the position. So a bit of perseverance as well, doesn't hurt.
Great, thanks. Another question?
Yeah. How involved are YGTs in various projects? Is it very hands-on, or is it more back support?
I can take that one.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of both, honestly. It depends on what you want to do also. It can be very, very hands-on, but it can also be more the high-level system engineering part, depending on where you work. CDF, for example, would be a bit more high-level, and then if you do work in the lab for a certain project, then it would be very hands-on.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I can maybe add also that in my case, it's very, very hands-on. I am almost doing exactly the same work as anyone in my team. I'm just getting slightly more support from them.
That's great, thank you. Any more questions?
Yes. I have no professional experience, but internships and voluntary work. Does it count? Does it have value?
Katie, want to take that one?
Absolutely, I think it does. I think we have a range of internships that we offer. Like I said, we have some educational and communication activities, and so you don't need to have a technical background to be working in the science directorate. For instance, you can come with just ideas, and if you've had some experience, even in an unrelated area, just showing that you've contributed to some project or that you're interested in developing something, you can present that in your application, and it's something that we would absolutely consider for internships. I think that would be a good starting point.
Great, thank you. So we're coming very close to the end of this session, so we'll start to wrap up. And as a final question to the 4 panelists, are there any final words that you would like to share with our audience and potential future candidates? Matthew, would you like to kick off?
I would say whatever your technical experience or background, you should just give it a go, because you'll be surprised what skills you have fit in here. So.
Thank you. Malta?
For me, it's like if you do end up here, I would encourage you to try and be very proactive and curious about it, and try to meet people, try to talk to people, and try to use all this expertise that is here to learn something, because that makes the experience really for me.
Thank you. Katie?
Yeah, I would say if you have any interest in space, then you should absolutely look at what ESA has to offer. And if you have questions, you know, these days with social media, you can reach out, you can ask people who work in all of these related areas, and just ask us questions about what we do, and hopefully we can find something that would interest you.
Thank you. Morgan?
And yeah, I would maybe add, because a lot has already been said, that there is a lot of opportunities here and a lot of unexpected things. So if there's any, I don't know, prejudice or preconceived ideas holding you from applying, then go over them, because it's full of surprise.
Thank you very much. So we'll just cut to the last slides, which contain some very useful links to close. So here are a list of all the links to all the various programs. You can find them on the Careers at ESA website. So to close, this is ESA and the Careers FAQ, more information, all on the Careers at ESA website. So you can find that on www.esa.int, and if you go to jobs.esa.int, that's where you actually apply. So I'd like to wrap up now. I'd like to say a very, very big thank you. I'd like to say thank you to our panelists, Morgan, Katie, Matthew, and Malta. Thank you for contributing. Thank you to the team behind the scenes, Miriam, Loren, Nuria, Peter, and Case. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. Don't forget to watch the next session coming up shortly about ESA education, starting in about an hour. And you can see all sessions from links which we have published on the Careers website. So if you missed something, don't worry, go there and you can watch the sessions again. Thank you.